Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We now turn to a poem that will be, guys, I just have to say this out loud, these are very difficult poems. Some readers of Leaves of Grass, they'll pick it up, they'll just start reading, and when they get to this poem, a sight in camp in the daybreak, gray and dim, they're done. This is poem number 17 of the 43 of Drum Taps. I told you guys when we first started that we were building towards poem 21, right in the middle of the wound dresser, which all these poems kind of lead up to that one. And I want to remind you that Whitman said early on in Leaves of Grass that in the poem To Thee, O Cause, that my book and the war are one. I've called Leaves of Grass a sustained theodicy, an attempt to try to explain why the really bad things have to happen in this world and how we can live with that. No longer ask, why is this happening to me, but rather, why is this happening for me? The most difficult thing in Whitman's life was to discuss the war and the experiences of the war. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at LearnStrong.net. Down the left-hand side, Talks with Walt. We did everything from inscriptions up through an introductory set of comments for drum taps, and we just did March in the Ranks. Our Nortons will tell us that in a notebook of 1862-63, that Whitman entered the idea for this poem together with its penultimate line, and it reads like this: sight at daybreak in camp in front of the hospital tent, 3 dead men lying, each with a blanket spread over him. I lift up one and look at the young man's face, calm and yellow. 'Tis strange. And then in parenthetics, young man, colon, I think this face of yours the face of my dead Christ, in parenthetic, end quote. The poem, Norton's finishes, has remained in Drum Taps group practically unchanged. This is one of those poems where we ask about Whitman the person, and probably in December of 62, when he was at Falmouth, Virginia, he began to put this idea together of this poem. No question, one of the more difficult poems to read, and yet I think all kinds of symbolism going on here as well. There are many who argue these poems we're into now, while difficult to read, are some of the most important poems in Leaves of Grass. Let's read in exegete. A sight in camp in the daybreak, gray and dim. As from my tent I emerge so early, sleepless. As slow I walk in the cool, fresh air, the path nearby, the hospital tent. 3 forms I see on stretchers lying, brought out there, untended, lying. Over each the blanket spread, ample brownish woolen blanket, gray and heavy blanket folding, covering all. Curious, I halt and silent stand, then with light fingers I from the face of the nearest, the first, just lift the blanket. Who are you, elderly man, so gaunt and grim, with well-grayed hair and flesh all sunken about the eyes? Who are you, my dear comrade? Then to the second I step, and who are you, my child and darling? Who are you, sweet boy with cheeks yet blooming? Then to the third, a face nor child nor old, very calm as of beautiful yellow-white ivory. Young man, I think I know you. I think this face is the face of the Christ himself, dead and divine and brother of all. And here, again, he lies. Now, how this poem finishes, how this poem culminates, will make Whitman in his own time quite radical, quite iconoclastic. There were, in fact, people who read this poem and said, how dare you? And to use the name of Christ in Leaves of Grass is very particular, and we will maybe even finish by taking a look at one other poem of Leaves of Grass. Notice we start with a sight. We've seen this so much in Roadside. We saw this as well. Notice daybreak. It's going to be interesting that it will be with light fingers later on in this poem. I think Whitman's doing some amazing stuff with this idea of daybreak. But notice It's gray. I've told you about the colors and the use of colors in drum taps. And it's also dim. The word dim gets used 7 times in drum taps. It takes us back to In Cabin Ships at Sea at the very beginning of Leaves of Grass. Go back and take a look at it. And then he'll say it, as from my tent I emerge. Now this emerging from the tent immediately makes us think, of course, of Plato's Republic and Book 7 and the cave allegory. We've given full lectures on it. In other words, as he comes out, but notice out of the security of the tent, we mentioned bivouac in a couple of earlier poems, but notice it's early and it's at daybreak, and he comes out, but he's sleepless. He hasn't been able to sleep. So our viewer, whoever that is, whether it's Whitman himself or it's this omniscient viewer or narrator, as we've been commenting on it, notice can't sleep, sleepless. And we're going to obviously anticipate the poem Sleepers to come here later. As slow I walk. And this will, again, make us think of Dante. I think the most horrific passages in Leaves of Grass are attributable especially to Dante's Divine Comedy and especially Inferno. In the cool, fresh air, we've heard about moderate air, now it's cool, fresh air. Before all of the cannon fire and everything and the smoke. The path nearby the hospital, used 8 times as we've already said in drum taps. Hospital tent. And then we've got the Trinity. And I've said that Dante's important, but of course to read Dante, as I say at learnstrong.net and all my lectures on Dante, you have to know your St. Augustine. And I think there is a lot of St. Augustine, and I think there is a lot, think about that. Yes, City of God is important for Augustine, but what is his foundational text? It is, of course, Confessions. And I think in some ways, Leaves of Grass is an attempt to try to speak to the St. Augustine's Confessions. And here it is with our Trinities. 3 forms I see. Of course, this idea of forms can take us to Plato's Republic, especially Book 6, and form theory. Of course, he's used this word already for forms to talk about the body as opposed to the soul. I see on stretchers, lying, brought out there, and then notice untended. The way that Whitman does these, just one words that just kind of sit out there at the end of a line and make us go, why untended? In other words, death is so ubiquitous that by this point, nobody seems to really care about these dead bodies that are lying around everywhere. Notice it's there untended, lying over each the blanket. Think about Vigil Strange that we just finished a couple of poems ago, and the laying of the blanket. There's so many different ways to think about the power of the blanket. Go back to our Homer and our study of especially the Iliad and the Odyssey and the idea of weaving. That's such an important part of it. Notice, just to prove that I'm not actually kind of pushing this idea too far, blanket's used now 3 times, and notice that it's ample brownish woolen blanket. In other words, it was weaved. The blanket was weaved. And there's just so many different ways to think about that, especially if you're borrowing from Homer. Gray, we're back to the coloration. Heavy, notice that this idea of heavy and dim can go together. Blanket, folding, covering all. I told you guys how much Whitman loves to use the word all through Leaves of Grass. Notice here, there's this attempt to try and hide, maybe by covering. But then the next word is curious, used 4 times in drum taps alone. For the first time will get used in starting from Paumanok 2. This idea of curiosity, this idea of I'm looking at something, then I want to look closer. So notice in so many of these poems, we play this game where we start out kind of from a larger perspective, and then we start to hone down, and we're obviously going to look at these three figures. Then we're told curious, I halt. Pure Dante, right? So Dante the Pilgrim, walking with Virgil, the guide, and then stop, and now we're ready to have some kind of an experience. But notice it's silent, right? Silent. Standing. Then with light fingers, I think, going back to Daybreak, this is amazing. With light fingers, I think here, respectful. What Whitman is trying, I think, to emphasize is I want to give you this horrific vision of the war, but I want to do it in a respectful way. And I think he's constantly trying to show, I'm doing this respectfully. With light fingers, I, from the face of the nearest, the first, notice there'll be 3. First, just lift the blanket. And for those of us who study our Plato, the fact that he uses the word just, of course, all of Republic is to try to define what justice is. So the use of the word just, I think, here is compelling. Just lift the blanket, just to allow to see. And now we're going to get a series of 4 rhetorical questions, right? Who are you? And of course, that question is foundational to our study of what? So many texts, from obviously the Delphi Oracle, right, about who are you? Obviously all of the great Greek texts that make us think about issues of identity and the like. Of course, the opening line of Hamlet. And I have said that I think a whole lot of what's going on in Drum Taps is attributable to Hamlet. The play was very influential for Whitman, and obviously the very first line of Hamlet, who's there. Who are you? And then it's an elderly man, so we're going to have old and then we're going to go young. Who are you, elderly man? And then gaunt and grim, the idea of the stacking of those two G sounds. With well-grayed hair, we're back to gray one more time. This idea of hair, I've said to you guys, I think he learned from his study of Milton's Paradise Lost, the idea of hair. And flesh all sunken about the eyes. An amazing, just kind of focus just a little bit more of the image. Who are you, my dear comrade? We've mentioned the power of the use of comrade throughout this reading of Leaves of Grass, and especially in Drum Taps. 12 times, think of that. 12 times the term comrade gets used. And then now then to the second I step. And who are you, my child and darling? It's compelling that the word darling gets used in this way. And notice it's a child. It is true. I mean, a lot of historians have pointed out how many children died in the Civil War for any number of reasons. Maybe they were in fact beating the drum. They were signed up. They looked older than they actually were. Who are you, sweet boy, with cheeks yet blooming? I mean, it's not an overstatement to say. Think about the use of the word blooming and the fact that the name of this collection of poems is Leaves of Grass, right, with blooming. Cut off, of course, in the bloom of youth is implied. And now to the third, which is obviously the most iconoclastic of all of them, if we're talking about the Trinity here. Then to the third, a face nor child nor old, very calm. And again, the use of the word calm in Drum Taps is fascinating. As of beautiful yellow-white ivory, go back to Hard Pressed, the previous poem, and the use of the word lily to talk about a symbol of purity and light. Now it's, young man, I think I know you. So notice, we go from who are you to I think I know who you are, and then notice the use of the dashes here, which obviously makes us think of Emily Dickinson. I think this face is the face of the Christ himself, Christ only being used one time in Drum Taps, and it's here. We're going to spend some time in a little bit thinking a little bit more about Whitman and his theology, especially his Christology. But notice here, it's Christ himself. I cannot emphasize for us as postmodern readers how radical this would have been for Whitman's time and readers of Whitman's day. Notice Christ himself, dead and divine and brother of all. And here, the use of the word again is quite compelling. He lies. Now, you'll remember that Christ gets used in the base of all metaphysics as in the very first of our study of Leaves of Grass. But here, to talk about the dead Christ, the divine, the brother of all, and here again, he lies. What's up with this use of the word again? Are we talking about resurrection? There's just so many ways to think about this, and obviously there's the Arthurian part of this as well. Just to finish it obviously the major message here is that war destroys both young and old. It removes so much. And then, of course, this question of the divine. War will remove what is divine, or does it? Because here it is again. At 2b, notice these three stanzas, some scholars have pointed out, almost working like a sonnet here with these three different stanzas. I have mentioned, obviously, at 3a Dante, but I want to take us really quickly to a poem that we will exegete later. We're not gonna talk about it at all now. I just want to share it with you because it's Christ is mentioned, and later on we will meet this poem. To him that was crucified, my spirit to yours, dear brother. Do not mind because many sounding your name do not understand you. I do not sound your name, but I understand you. I specify you with joy, O my comrade, to salute you and to salute those who are with you before and since, and those to come also. That we all labor together, transmitting the same charge in succession. We, few, equals, indifferent of lands, indifferent of times. We, enclosers of all continents, all castes, allowers of all theologies, compassionators, perceivers, rapport of men. We walk silent among disputes and assertions, but reject not the disputers, nor anything that is asserted. We hear the bawling and din. We're reached at by divisions, jealousies, recriminations on every side. They close prematurely upon us to surround us, my comrade. Yet we walk unheld, free the whole earth over, journeying up and down till we make our ineffaceable mark upon time and the diverse eras, till we saturate time and eras, that the men and women of races, ages to come, may prove brethren and lovers as we are. I find this a compelling read to go along with a sight in camp. Finally, at 3B, how are we going to own one of these really, really demanding poems? Well, I think it is a fair question to ask. Do you think that in the end, war does ruin all that is divine and beautiful? Or is there a way to find a sustained theodicy even in war?